At my $985,000 housewarming, my sister grabbed my arm. "This house is perfect for my family." Mom added, "Pack your things." I hit play on the TV. I, 29 male, am a cybersecurity architect for a mid-sized fintech firm. My job description basically boils down to anticipating how bad actors will try to break into systems they have no business being in, and then building digital fortresses to keep them out. I deal with threats, vulnerabilities, and social engineering on a daily basis. It turns out that specific skill set transfers perfectly to dealing with my own family, although I wish it didn't have to. I grew up as the spare to my sister's heir. She was the golden child, cheer captain, prom queen, the one who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. I was the nerd in the basement coding until 3 a.m., the one whose hobbies were viewed as a waste of time and whose personality was deemed difficult because I asked too many questions. When I left for college on a scholarship, I didn't look back. I built a career, a portfolio, and a life completely separate from their chaos. My sister, on the other hand, peaked in high school. She married a guy, my brother-in-law, who describes himself as a serial entrepreneur on LinkedIn, but is actually just unemployed with a series of failed drop-shipping schemes and crypto scams. They have 3 kids who they use as emotional riot shields to deflect criticism. They're constantly broke, constantly moving due to landlord disputes, and constantly being bailed out by my parents. Last month, I finally closed on my dream home. It is a $985,000 contemporary build in a gated community just outside of Seattle. It is the physical manifestation of 10 years of grinding. Floor-to-ceiling glass, smart home integration, a chef's kitchen, and enough server space in the basement to run a small ISP. I didn't want to invite them to the housewarming. I really didn't. My gut told me to keep this part of my life siloed off, but Mother pulled the "we are getting older" card and the "we just want to be proud of you for once" guilt trip. She cried on the phone, talking about how they never see me and how they just wanted to celebrate my success. I fell for it. I thought maybe, just maybe, the success would force them to respect me as an adult. I was an idiot. The party was scheduled for Saturday at 4 p.m. I had catered food, an open bar, and about 30 of my colleagues and close friends attending. These are professional people, lawyers, developers, engineers, people who know how to behave. At 3:30 p.m., a massive U-Haul truck rumbled down the quiet suburban street. It didn't pass my house. It didn't turn around in the cul-de-sac. It backed directly into my driveway, the reverse beeper echoing off the modern architecture of my neighbors' homes. I was in the kitchen prepping the hors d'oeuvres when I saw it on the security monitor mounted under the cabinet. My stomach dropped. I wiped my hands and walked out the front door just as my sister hopped out of the passenger seat. She wasn't wearing party clothes. She was wearing leggings, a stained hoodie, and a messy bun. BIL got out of the driver's side, looking disheveled and frantic. Mother and father pulled up behind them in their sedan, blocking the truck. "What is this?" I asked, walking down the slate steps. "Surprise!" Sister squealed. She ran up the walkway, bypassing a hug completely, and pushed past me into the foyer. "Oh my God, it is even bigger than the Zillow photos." "Sister," I said, stepping back inside to stop her from wandering further, "why is there a U-Haul in my driveway? The HOA is strictly against commercial vehicles parked overnight, and my guests are arriving in 20 minutes. Mother walked in, clapping her hands and looking around with a critical, appraising eye. "Don't be such a worrywart," she said, dismissing my concern with a wave of her hand. "It is just for the unloading. We can move it to the street later once the heavy stuff is inside." "Unloading what?" I asked. I felt the cold prickle on the back of my neck, the same feeling I get when I see a brute force attack hitting a firewall. "The gifts," Mother said, beaming a little too brightly. "And, well, a few other things. Let's not talk shop yet. We're here to celebrate. Show us the grand tour." I should have kicked them out right then. I should have told them to turn that truck around and leave. But the gaslighting was instant, and the social pressure was already mounting. My friends were arriving. My boss pulled up in his Tesla right as BIL was tossing the truck keys to me. "You park it, I'm tired," BIL grunted, walking past me without even a handshake. I stared at the keys in my hand. I didn't park it. I moved it to the far side of the driveway to clear a path for the caterers, my mind racing. Why would they bring a U-Haul for gifts? It didn't make sense, but I had 30 people walking through my door, and I didn't want a domestic disturbance scene on my front lawn before the first drink was poured. The party started. The vibe was weird from the jump. My friends were drinking wine, admiring the view of the mountains, and complimenting the architecture. My family was measuring. I caught BIL in the garage, tapping on the walls with his knuckles. "Is this load-bearing?" he asked when he saw me. "I'm thinking we knock this out for a man cave. Put a pool table here." "You're not knocking anything out," I said, laughing nervously, trying to keep it light for the sake of the guests nearby. "This is my house, and I like the garage how it is." He just winked at me, a greasy, condescending wink. "Right, your house, for now." I walked away, my heart rate spiking. I went to the server room in the basement, my sanctuary, to check the internal feeds. I have enterprise-grade audio and video surveillance in every common area of the house. I pulled up the feed from the living room. My sister was cornering one of my colleagues, a female developer named Sarah. "So how much does a place like this cost to heat?" Sarah was asking. "And the schools? Are they good for special needs? My middle one has behavioral issues." Sarah looked uncomfortable. "I think the listing said it's in the Lake Washington district. It's very good." Sarah nodded, looking like she was taking mental notes. "Perfect. That is just perfect." The incident, the confrontation that ended it all, happened 2 hours in. We were all in the main living area. The sun was setting, the ambient lighting was on, and the house looked spectacular. I was talking to my boss about the upcoming quarter when I felt a hand clamp onto my bicep. It was my sister. She wasn't smiling anymore. She had a look of manic determination, her eyes wide and unblinking. "This house is perfect for my family," she announced. She didn't whisper it, she projected it. The conversation in the immediate vicinity died out. "It's a great house," I said, trying to gently pull my arm away. "I'm glad you like it. I worked hard for it." She tightened her grip, her nails digging into my skin. "No, you don't get it. It is perfect. The school district is top tier, the backyard is fenced for the kids, there's an in-law suite for mom and dad when they visit. It's exactly what we need." "Okay," I said, looking around. My friends were watching now. The silence was spreading across the room like a contagion. "Well, you can look for something similar in the area, though the market is pretty tight right now." Mother stepped into the circle. She placed a hand on my other shoulder, trapping me. "Honey, we need to stop the charade." "Your sister has already given notice at her apartment. They have to be out by Monday morning." I froze. My blood ran cold. And, Mother said, her voice dropping to that scolding tone she used when I was 12 and didn't clean my room. "You are a single man. You work all the time. You do not need 4 bedrooms and 3,000 square feet. It is obscene. It is wasteful. Your sister has a family. She has children who need stability. She has needs." "I bought this house," I said slowly, emphasizing every word. "I paid the down payment. The mortgage is in my name. I signed the papers." "Technically," Sister interrupted, her voice shrill, "but we all know you used family money to get where you are. You owe us. You owe me for being the one who stayed close to Mom and Dad while you ran off to play computer games." "I haven't taken a dime from you people since I was 18, I snapped, my patience finally shattering. "I paid for my own college. I built my own career." Pack your things, Mother added, cutting me off as if I hadn't spoken. We have discussed it as a family. You can move into the apartment Sister is leaving. We paid the rent through the end of the month, so you have a few days to figure it out. Or you can take the in-law suite here if you agree to follow their house rules. No overnight guests, no loud music. But this house is for the children. The room was dead silent. My boss looked like he was about to call 911. My friends were staring with their mouths open. You want me to swap my $1-million home for a rental apartment? I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and disbelief. You want me to just hand over the keys and leave? It is the moral thing to do, Father spoke up from the couch, sipping my expensive scotch like he owned the bottle. Don't be greedy, son. Family helps family. You have enough. It is time to share. I brought the boxes, BIL shouted from the hallway, oblivious to the tension or perhaps just ignoring it. Start loading his junk up. We need to get the master bedroom clear for the mattress. That was the moment. That was the snap. They thought this was a negotiation. They thought they could bully me in front of an audience, relying on my shame and my desire to keep up appearances to force me into submission. They thought I was still the scared kid in the basement who would do anything to avoid a fight. They didn't know that I had been tracking their financials for 6 months. They didn't know that my paranoia was actually professional vigilance. Okay, I said. I pulled my arm free from my sister with a sharp jerk. I hear you. You think you deserve this house. We don't think, Sister sneered, crossing her arms. We know. Now give me the keys and the alarm code. Let's check the tape, I said. I walked over to the coffee table and picked up the remote. What? Mother asked, looking confused. I pointed the remote at the massive 85-inch screen mounted above the fireplace. I said, let's check the tape. I hit a button on my phone to cast my private server to the screen. The screen flickered to life. It wasn't a movie. It was a high-resolution screen recording of a digital document, zoomed in for clarity. What is that? BIL asked, squinting as he walked into the room. That, I narrated, my voice echoing in the silent room, is a foreclosure notice for the house you claimed you sold for a profit 3 years ago. But that is old news. Let's look at something more recent. I clicked next. A video started playing. It was grainy but clear enough. It was taken from a low angle, a coffee shop security camera. I hired a private investigator 2 months ago when I noticed strange hard inquiries on my credit report that I didn't authorize. On the screen, my sister and mother were sitting at a table with a man in a cheap, shiny suit. Audio from the TV. So, if we use his social security number, can we get the bridge loan approved by Friday? That was Mother's voice. It is risky. Ideally, we need him to co-sign in person. He won't co-sign, Sister said, waving a latte around. He is stingy. Just forge it. I have his old passport scans from when we went to Mexico. He never checks his credit. He's too busy with his nerd stuff. Once we get the cash, we pay off the bookie, and then we figure out the rest later. We just need to stop the bleeding. The room gasped. It was a collective intake of breath. My sister's face went the color of ash. Turn it off, Mother shrieked, lunging for the remote. This is illegal. You recorded us. Actually, I said, holding the remote up out of her reach, that was in a public place. No expectation of privacy. But you're right. Let's look at something more private. Let's see what you guys were talking about today in my house. I clicked next. This video was from inside my house, from 3 hours ago, before the party started, when I was in the backyard setting up the bar. As I mentioned, I have cameras in the smoke detectors, high fidelity with audio. The video showed BIL and Sister walking through my living room when I was in the backyard setting up the bar. Audio from the TV. This place is a gold mine. We can take a HELOC out on this within a month, get at least $200,000 out of the equity. We have to get him out first. Mom says if we just move our stuff in and refuse to leave, he can't evict us for 30 days. Squatter's rights. Once we're in, he can't touch us. And in 30 days, I can strip the copper and the appliances if he tries to fight us. He'll pay us to leave. Or we just forge the deed transfer. My cousin at the notary office owes me a favor. We can backdate it. I hate him. I hate that he has this. It should be mine. I deserve this view. I paused the video on my sister's twisted, hateful face. I turned to the room. My family was paralyzed. My friends were filming with their phones. My boss was texting someone, probably his own lawyer. "So," I said, addressing my sister, who looked like she was about to vomit, "you aren't here for a housewarming. You're here for a hostile takeover because you owe a loan shark, let's call him Tony, about 50 grand for your husband's gambling debts. You committed identity theft to try and take out a bridge loan in my name 2 months ago, which I blocked, by the way. That's why the loan fell through. And now your plan was to squat in my house, forge deed transfer, and leverage my equity to save your kneecaps." "Lies!" Mother screamed, lunging across the coffee table, knocking over a tray of drinks. "He's lying. He promised us this house. He's jealous of his sister's family." I didn't flinch. It is not lies. It is evidence. And here's the best part. I pressed one final button. The screen switched to a live feed of my front porch. Blue and red lights were flashing against the siding. 2 police cruisers had just pulled up behind the U-Haul, blocking it completely. "I called them 10 minutes ago when you told me to pack my things. I figured that was a credible threat of extortion and trespassing." "You called the cops on your family?" Father roared, standing up, his face purple. "After everything we did for you, you ungrateful brat?" "You did nothing for me," I yelled back, finally losing the cool demeanor I had practiced. "You ignored me. You drained my college fund to pay for her wedding. You stole my identity, and now you try to steal my house. You aren't family. You are parasites, and I'm fumigating." The doorbell rang. "That is for you," I said. The next 20 minutes were a blur of chaos, but a beautiful, vindicating kind of chaos. The officers entered. I met them at the door. I showed them the footage of the squatters' rights conversation, proof of malicious intent and conspiracy to commit fraud. I showed them the U-Haul as evidence of intent to trespass and occupy. But the interconnected, surprising plot I mentioned, the twist that really nailed the coffin, it wasn't just the gambling debt. While the officers were taking statements and trying to calm Mother down, one of them ran BIL's ID. "Sir," the officer said, turning to BIL, "step away from the wall." "Why?" BIL stammered. "This is a civil dispute. We live here." "Sir, I have a warrant here from the state of Oregon," the officer said, reaching for his cuffs. BIL's eyes went wide. He tried to run. He actually tried to bolt through the sliding glass door to the backyard. He didn't realize that I had upgraded the glass to impact-resistant, hurricane-rated glazing, and he didn't realize it was locked. He'd bounced off the glass with a dull, sickening thud that I felt in my teeth. He crumpled to the floor, dazed. He was tackled and cuffed right there on my new heated floors. "What is the warrant for?" Mother cried, clutching her pearls, which I realized in that moment were fake, just like her affection. "PPP loan fraud and embezzlement," the officer said, hoisting BIL up, "and apparently flight to avoid prosecution." It turned out the business BIL had been running was a shell company. He had stolen over $200,000 in government relief funds during the pandemic, blown it all on gambling and lifestyle, and they had been running from the feds for 6 months. That is why they needed my house. It wasn't just a place to live. They needed a hideout that wasn't in their name so they couldn't be traced. They wanted to steal my house to use as a bunker. "And," I added, handing the officer a folder I had prepared with my PI, "here is the proof of the attempted identity theft regarding the bridge loan. My mother and sister are co-conspirators. The video evidence is all here on this drive." "You can't do this," Sister shrieked as the second officer grabbed her wrist, the same wrist she had used to grab mine earlier. "I have children. You can't arrest me." "Your children are the only victims here," I said. "And don't worry, I called CPS. They're on their way to pick them up from the car. They won't be sleeping in a U-Haul tonight." They were hauled out, all of them. Mother and father were charged with conspiracy and obstruction of justice because they tried to physically block the officers from taking BIL. Sister was charged with trespassing, attempted fraud, and identity theft. BIL is looking at federal time for the wire fraud and embezzlement. As the squad cars drove away, the silence returned to the neighborhood. My boss walked up to me. He handed me a beer. "I think," he said, looking at the flashing lights fading into the distance, "that was the best housewarming party I have ever been to." The aftermath was nuclear. Because I pressed charges and handed over the digital evidence, the family is destroyed. Mother and father had to liquidate their own assets to pay for legal defense, only to find out their credit was ruined because sister had stolen their identities 2 years ago to open credit cards. They are currently living in a rental 1 step above a motel. Sister lost custody of the kids. They're with BIL's parents, who are actually decent people and had no idea what was going on. They were horrified. I didn't keep the U-Haul. It was impounded as part of the investigation, but I did keep the TV. Every time I sit on my couch and watch a movie, I look at that screen and remember the look on my mother's face when the audio played. It was the look of a predator realizing they just walked into a cage. I stood on my balcony that night, looking out at the view I had earned. I thought about the "pack your tings" comment. I realized I had packed my tings years ago. I packed my self-respect, my dignity, and my spine, and I took them with me when I left their toxicity. They wanted a house perfectly suited for their family. They got a cell perfectly suited for their crimes. If you enjoyed watching me turn a housewarming into a family roasting, hit that subscribe button. It's the only thing in this story that's free.